I can't believe I have to follow all those people. Funny and smart and beautiful. Thank you, all of you, for sharing those powerful words and thoughts with us. It's an honor to be here. When I contemplated this question, I thought about a recent experience I had with my kids. For the last 2 summers, I've gone to the little town of Chamonix, France. It's in the French Alps. I teach a writing workshop there every summer, or at least I have for the last couple summers. And it's one of those little villages in the Alps that you're honestly, there's just a few city streets, and all around you are these beautiful, high, snowy peaks. And the first summer we went there, my kids were 8 and 9, a boy and a girl, and Chamonix in the winter is a skier's paradise, but in the summer there are basically 2 things to do: hike or go to the top of the mountain and jump off with nothing but a kite on your back. And you can guess which of these my children wanted to do. They immediately saw that the sky was full of these parasailers. They're called parapentes in French. And they said, we're going to do that. And my husband and I immediately said, there's absolutely no way you're doing this. You know, they're 8 and 9 years old. They cannot go to the top of a mountain and jump off of it. You know, it's just an unreasonable thing. And they kept this relentless campaign up for the entire time we were there, for about 3 weeks. And every day they would say, we need to do this, we need to do this. And every day my husband and I would say, you absolutely cannot do this. You can do this when you're 18. Our job is to protect you. And they stayed with it. They were really so determined that they were going to do this thing. And my husband and I also stayed with it. We were determined that they wouldn't. And finally, when essentially my authority gave way, I realized that the way out of this would be to tell them that even if I did say yes, that they wouldn't be allowed to go, because of course the French would have a rule about children jumping off of mountains. So I said to my son, go to the, you know, there was a guy in the village saying, you know, hawking these parapente trips, and I said, you're too young to go, and go ask him, you know, go ask him how old you have to be before you can jump off of a mountain. And I was sure that they would say a reasonable age, but of course, no. My kids walk up to the guy and they say, how old do you have to be to jump off a mountain? And he said, 8. Which is, let's just face it, fucking insane. It has to be at least like 13, right? Anyway, but no. So we knew we didn't have that. So my husband and I, we searched our souls. I was teaching the class. I even took it to my students. I said, a show of hands, you know, if you were in my situation, would you let your kid jump off the mountain? Nobody raised their hand. I had these images of like one or both of my children dying, and then I would be like on the front page of the New York Times, and I'd be this terrible mother. And so I really said to my kids, you just can't. And my son looked at me, and it was one of those moments. He was only 9, but when your kids are about that age, they start to transition from that place of being essentially your baby to being the humans that they really are inside, and they start to become the people they're going to be. And my son looked at me and he said, you know, Mom, you know, and before, you know, when I was still trying my campaign to convince him, I said, you know, listen, the thing is even if I said yes, I just want you to know that, you know, you would be up there. What this really means, it's one thing to decide that you want to jump off a mountain, but then you actually have to jump off the mountain. And you know what this means is you go to the top, and the deal is you are strapped you know, to a Frenchman, which, let's face it, doesn't sound all bad, but you're strapped to a Frenchman, but you're in the front, and your job as the person who's paid for this ride is to run off the side of the mountain and leap into nothing but air. And there you are with a Frenchman and a kite, you know. And I explained this to my kids, and I said, so even if we did say yes, you would at the last minute back out. You wouldn't have the nerve to do this. You would be afraid. And my son looked at me with such gravity and seriousness, and he said, Mom, I am afraid. If I'm going to be honest with you, I'm actually really afraid to do this. But I don't want to be a person who doesn't do things just because they scare me. And when he said that to me, I knew I was screwed. I knew that I had to let my kids do this. And I also knew that he was teaching me what I all of his life had taught him, and his sister as well. That I have always told my kids, if something is going to dictate your decisions and the course of your lives, fear must not be one of them. And this is something that has been a value that I've passed on in language and action really all of their lives. And finally, I was confronted with this thing that I had given to them, in these words that I had given them. Essentially, the story that I want my kids to tell themselves is exactly what my son said to me. I am afraid, but I don't want to be a person who's ruled by fear. And so we paid the money, and we sent our children with strange Frenchmen. We could not even go to the top with them because it's so far the fuck up there that you can't get down to see your child dying, so in time, so we send them up there. We send them with these Frenchmen, and they go, and then we are made to then go walk through the town and stand in a grassy field and wait. And we have to wait like a long time, like half hour, 45 minutes. And it's so high in the sky, and it's this blue sky and these snowy peaks, and it's so high that when they jump off the mountain, you can't even see, you can't see them jump off. It's some far place. And after about 20 minutes, there's this little speck in the sky, and you think it might be the child who came out of your vagina. And then they get closer, and they get closer, and pretty soon these two people were coming from the sky, and they were calling down to us, "Mom, Dad," and they landed in this field, and they both had, and they weren't dead, and they both had this amazing, not just look on their faces, but an entire new presence. And it was a presence that I recognized, and that I'm going to guess that all of you also would recognize. And that is that feeling that you have that you can absolutely only get one way. And that is when you have done something that was hard and scary to do, and you did it anyway. That to me, that way that they were in that field, and that thing that I recognized in them, is essentially the confluence of words and action. And in so many ways, I thought of that story when I was reflecting on this question, which, I want to say I reject. I don't think that we can place these things in a dichotomy. They are not in opposition. And if anywhere, at this very festival where, we've crammed together the question mark and the exclamation point, we've decided that curiosity and surprise can sit not just side by side, but live together. I think that this is the time that we can really think about in ways comical and deep and light and dark about how much we're failing ourselves if we actually think that these two things can be separated. This is something that has come up for me so much also in my work as Dear Sugar. I'm essentially a professional receiver of questions in my role as an advice columnist and now in the podcast. And so many people, essentially what's wrong with them, that letter of agony, that letter of sorrow, that letter of secrecy or denial or fear or suffering, it's all about the story that they've told themselves. The reason that they've laid out to me in their letter that they are to blame for the miscarriage they had, or the reason they've laid out for themselves that they can't write that first book that they feel burning inside of them, or the reason that they cannot risk loving someone because they fear heartbreak. And I could go on and on and on throughout, down the line of all the problems we have, all of those questions that are presented to me. And in each one, always the truest answer is that truth that I found in my own life, that the absolute only way we can change, the only way we can make a decision, that one action that actually changes our lives, is to tell ourselves a different story. Can I stop drinking? Can I leave a relationship that makes me feel can I leave somebody that makes me feel I can't live without them? The answers to those questions are yes, but they demand really big things from us on the level of language, on the level of the inner voice that we all hear. And I think that those two things, one leading to the next, is essentially what we're talking about when we talk about action. These are not, they are not two things that we carry separately, but together. And I love that rose so much. Even the people who are on the stage tonight, my favorite part of tonight, I think, listening to these other speakers, is how much the people who came down on the side of action and the people who came down on the side of words, to me, seem to be really singing in harmony, speaking that same kind of truth, that we all have both the power and the obligation to rewrite the stories about our own lives, and also to rewrite the story about who we are as a people. And I think about that, pondering the state we're in this world, and thinking about what would happen if we thought of action and word in harmony when we considered things like forgiveness and generosity and keeping people out and letting people in. Thank you so much.